I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming to this regularly scheduled meeting of the school committee of September 26th, 2016. This is your reminder that this meeting is being electronically recorded. At this time, I'd like to call representatives from the Whitefield Foundation forward, from the Rebecca Whitefield Foundation. So this is always a special event when we can call you in to thank you for everything that you've done for the Attleboro Public Schools. This year, the Rebecca Whitefield Foundation is donating $3,000 to Attleboro School Department, and my understanding is that's made up of gifts of $300 to each of the elementary schools and $500 to each of our middle schools. So thank you very much for your continued support and generosity to the Attleboro Public Schools.
Thank you for having us, and we just wanted to say thank you for the support on both ends, back and forth, and we just want this to continue updating the libraries because Becky loved reading. She went to Attleboro Public Schools, so we just want those kids to be able to take out books that are updated and new to their interests.
And I should have clarified the gifts themselves to each of the schools are actually to the libraries at each of the schools. So thank you for that. And why don't we at this time get a picture of our superintendent with you in the check?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh. That's not the real check.
You can try.
I'm not a professional photographer, but I have some talents. Great. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Oh.
Give that to me. Thank you.
Hey, Steve, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I know you guys have a big tournament coming up. Can you give us a little insight, please?
Yes, October 22nd, 15th,
Yeah.
all right, sorry about that. It's a Saturday, it's a cornhole tournament. You can either play or come and have fun. It's from 2 to, I believe it probably goes to like 10 at night. And it's at the Attleboro Elks. And it's a $20 fee just to come in and be a participant and, you know, an active spectator. If you want to play, it's $40 and that will get your tournament spot. And then we have food, DJ, lottery as far as all kinds of roulette plays and cash bar. It's fun. It's fun. Last year was the first year we did it. It was done like literally on the spur of the moment. We just threw it together and it was a huge success.
Yeah.
So we were on the fence about this year and everyone's like, you gotta do it again. It was great. So.
Yeah, we're a good turnout, and it's one of our two fundraisers, so it's if anybody can make it, come on down.
I'll
See you there.
doing what we're-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tickets available online or?
There is on Rebecca's Facebook page, the Rebecca Lynn Whitefield Foundation. There'll be the information on there, or you can get them at the door.
And what was the date again?
October 15th, Saturday, at 2 p.m. it starts. The tournament will actually start, I think, at 4.
Great.
We'll be opening around 2.
Thank you.
Okay. Hope to see some of you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Next, we have our Around Attleboro Public Schools report by our student representative, Allie DeRose. Allie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, last time Harry and I were here, we introduced to you guys the Around Attleboro Public Schools. So basically, we're just going to tell you what's going on around schools within the next 2 weeks and get a taste of Attleboro. So there's an early release district-wide on October 7th, so that's for all schools. And then Thatcher on September 30th is hosting a Whitson's barbecue, and on the same day, Hyman Fine is hosting a pasta party. middle schools, you know, they just really have the early release. So the early release on October 7th again, district-wide. The senior parent and guardian night is September 28th at Attleboro High School. I believe it's in the auditorium. And we also have the early release. And then ACE PAC is having another meeting on September 29th in Fine Elementary School at 6:30 p.m. And the big one is the Blue Pride Palooza, the second annual one, and that's October 22nd. Last year, and it contributed so much to the high school. It really helped the students out. It was just a really, really good time for everyone. So, get your tickets.
Allie, where can the public get tickets?
ahsbpac.com.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. And for the initiatives update, so this Friday, before the football game, SAC is hosting a tailgate for the students of Attleboro High School. So tickets are sold during all 4 lunches for $5 this week, every day. And that includes like a hamburger, a hot dog, a snack, and a drink. We're going to have some backyard games like cornhole, ladder ball. So it's just kind of a way that students can come out and show their school spirit before the game, and then we can get pumped up for the game. So that'll be fun. And Harry and I both had the opportunity to attend the MSBA visioning workshops this week. I think I'm going to touch upon it with Mr. Sawyer, Mr. Rooney a little later on. But basically, I mean, it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And him and I both are very thankful that we got to attend it and be a part of such a big thing that's happening in Attleboro. So, yeah. Any questions?
Between this and the visioning workshop last week, how do you have time for anything else?
No, it's tough. It's definitely tough, but we make it work. We make a good team, so it's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, moving on in our agenda to the approval of the minutes from the September 12th, 2016, September 13th, 2016, and September 20th, 2016 meetings. The minutes were provided in the materials circulated to the committee. We have a motion to approve.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next, we have our consent agenda. Motion to accept 5 cases and 10 reams of paper from an anonymous donor to Studley.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $250 from the Hockomock Rocks LLC to the softball line at the high school.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $100 from Anthony F. Vieira III, Heating and Air Conditioning, to the Best Buddies for the Emma Lamoth Leadership Conference.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in...
Just for clarification, it's for Emma Lamoth to attend the leadership conference.
Correct.
Oh,
Mhm.
Okay. Not the Emma Lamoth.
Someday she will have a leadership conference.
That would be
impressive.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept a donation in the amount of $2,745 from SAGRA for the following: AHS softball field fence project, $2,000; AHS field hockey team, $372.50; AHS softball team, $372.50.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion?
Do we, can we get a little insight on the field fence project? What's the plans? Do we know generally? Is there any information?
Sorry, say that again?
The Attleboro High School softball field fence project? You're fixing the fence?
So it seems.
I'll accept that.
I can only imagine that it has probably something to do to maybe quantify the dugouts a little bit better. Because when you come on the visitor side, there's not like a clear delineation of where the where the bleachers end and where the visitors dugout is. That's just an assumption.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve the field trip proposal for 16 grade 9 through 12 high school students to attend the MASC State Conference in Hyannis, Massachusetts from March 8th to March 10th, 2017.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
That concludes our consent agenda. Moving on to our business agenda for tonight, Superintendent Sawyer has a DESI accountability status update.
Thank you. Today at 5 o'clock, the state released accountability data for the entire state and lifted the embargo, so we are finally free to speak about results here in Attleboro. For that reason, I could not provide you with an advance copy of this presentation, but I will send it out electronically so that you have a copy. So let me get right into results. So starting with accountability, I wanted to bring to your attention the state's own definition of the accountability system, which is, they refer to it as a coherent structure for linking the state's accountability and assistance activities with districts based on their level of need. I think because they score every district in the state, there's the jump in logic to say that somehow those scores are an accurate measure necessarily of school quality or district quality. That's not really, by their own definition, what they're doing. They have what they refer to as assistance activities, and that's the state's efforts to assist districts. Of course, if you remember Ronald Reagan's line about government assistance, right? The 9 scariest words in the English language. I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Those activities which DESI provides to districts that are in need of assistance, they do so by identifying which districts are the ones that they're going to help. And that's the point of the accountability system, is to simply narrow down which, because again, there is only so much the DESI can do. The size of the organization, the amount of money that they have, really sort of narrows down how much they can help. So the accountability system is their way of honing in on which districts get the assistance. And there's levels of assistance, right? Level 3 is the widest level that has the smallest amount of actual impact on the district, and then level 4 is actually much more so, and then level 5 is almost resulting in takeover. So again, this accountability system is sometimes, we make the leap to say that the accountability measures somehow reflect things that they aren't really intended to. The other point I would make is that these measures are related to only certain subjects, tested at only at certain grades, and on assessments that are taken at one point during the year, only over a course of a couple days. So this is a limited window on any one student's performance, and therefore any school's performance, and therefore the district's performance as a whole. Now this year, I'm about to share with you that I have good news, that we did well, and that's great, and it's tempting to brag about all the great work that we are in fact doing. But I think it's important that we, just like in these moments, just as we would if we were disappointed, it's important even when we're doing well to point out that these measures, these levels, this data has value. It's important to what we do. Looking carefully at the data and using the data to help us to improve the work that we do is an important part of what we do, and something that we do believe in. However, it's only part of what we do, and that this is like any system you would come up with, it has its limitations, it has its flaws, and to put too much stock into it is to fall into a trap that I think is set unintentionally by the system itself. So I think it's really important that we put this data in a context of, this is one measure, it's one way of looking at what we do, and we are concerned about things that aren't captured by this measure, which is left out of this conversation. So with that being said, the good news is Attleboro is a level 2 district. And we are level 2 because we have one or more schools that are classified as level 2. So the district, any district's level status is determined by the lowest level of the level of the lowest school. So in Attleboro, level 2 is our lowest school, so we are level 2. How does that compare to the rest of the state? You'll see that 62% of the districts, these are districts, 62% of districts in Massachusetts this year are level 2. So we are right there with most of the state. 20% are level 1, 15 level 3, and then 2% level 4 and 1% level 5. So that's sort of a picture of how the state's doing as a whole, and as you see, we're right there with everybody else. In terms of school accountability status, we have 6 level 1 schools, 3 level 2 schools, and no schools designated 3, 4, or 5. So again, that's how we get that level 2 as a district rating. This is fantastic. I'm trying to think, have we ever had 6 schools level 1 before? I don't think so. No, I think this is our, in many ways, the best results we've had to date. So all 5 of our elementaries are level 1, and we have Coelho at level 1, and then the other 2 middle schools and the high school at level 2. So these are impressive results, to be sure. And again, where does this put us with everybody else? If you look at us, you see we have 3 schools at 2, 1 at 6. So the state, 50% of the schools, these are schools now. 50% of the schools statewide are level 2. We have a third of our schools at level 2, and only 32% statewide are level 1, and fully 2/3 of our schools are level 1. So even though we're right with everybody else in terms of our district score, when you break that district score down into individual schools, as a district, we're doing better than the state in terms of how many schools that are doing well. I mean, if anyone has any questions along the way, please stop me as we go. Okay, so that was our accountability data. So let's talk about achievement data. And again, achievement data is student performance at a given year relative to standards specific to each grade level. So that's each student gets a score. That score is how they perform against a standard in that year on that standard, on those standards for that level. So last year we took MCAS and PARCC. These are our MCAS results. So we had MCAS, grade 5 science, grade 8 science, grade 10 science, which are the top 3. Then we had grade 10 math and grade 10 ELA. And then you've got 4 performance levels: warning failing, needs improvement, proficient, and advanced. As you can see in grade 10, we are doing pretty well in terms of proficient and advanced. That's the vast majority of our students. And then science, we still have a ways to go, and that's a very common story.
Is it typical for grade 10 to have more students who are advanced than there are proficient? Math scores tend to be generally lower in terms of proficiencies in advanced than ELA, as is the case here. But I thought it was very interesting that the advanced level on math is larger than our proficient group. Is that I didn't believe it to be typical, but am I mistaken, or?
No, I think these results are pretty typical.
Okay.
I think that what you're seeing in your math scores is the divide between the students who are doing well in math and then those who struggle. So, the middle ground is diminishing. So as we move more students to advanced, the real problem is that we're not moving kids from needs improvement or failing up to
proficient kids are now becoming advanced. Okay, that's interesting.
All right, so those are our MCAS results. For PARCC, there are 5 performance levels. Same basic picture, and this is ELA, and you've got grades 3 through 8. Again, you'll notice that green is by far the biggest. Green and blue are what are considered passing under MCAS. And we are having most of our students in that particular range. For math, it's a similar picture. Again, most of our students are in the green and blue, with some in that approaching level.
Is that yellow, approaching? I just can't read it from here.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's
okay.
approach.
Yeah, the orange is partially met, red is did not meet. So, it's cut a little bit differently with the 5 levels. But yellow, green, and blue are all sort of where you would expect most students to be, with as many green and blue as possible. Obviously, blue under this system is harder to get, and so you'll see fewer. And honestly, Park, we're moving away from as we go to MCAS 2.0.
Superintendent, question, and I should know this, but the bands,
Yeah.
are they based off of a standard norm, or is that relative, or is the cut score relative to other students taking the test across the United States?
So nationally, they do the cut scores. I'm not quite familiar with how they reach them. I'm more familiar with how they do MCAS.
Once they get the full aggregate of numbers, then they cut them accordingly. So it varies by grade level and by subject area.
So this is as much a reflection of how our students did compared to other students across the 8 or so states than it is,
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so that's a sense of their scores, but what does it really mean? There's a couple important points being made on this slide. So in giving us our level 2 status, we're level 2 because we are not, as a whole, each school is not meeting the targets. If you meet your targets, you basically get enough points in the system to get level 1 status. And level 2 status just means that you are making progress, but you haven't met your goals. And level 3 status is really just the bottom 20% of the people who are piled into level 2, right? So, again, this is why you have to take all of this with a grain of salt. So they've got this whole system where you have goals, and there's a whole series of them, and you can go online and really dig into this data if that's something you enjoy. But there's this set of goals, and if you meet your goal, you get 75 points. If you are approaching the goal, you get 50 points. If you if you lose ground, you get 0, and 25 is that it doesn't change, right?
Right.
So again, 0 points if you go backwards, 25 points if you don't make a change, 50 points if you improve but don't make the target, 75 points if you make the target, and 100 points if you exceed the target. And for each measure, for each subgroup, there's a whole bunch of measures like their ELA target, their math target, the growth. For high school, it's graduation rate. There's a series of measures, and so then they add them all up and they divide by the number of measures, and so that's how you get a score where 75 is the target, right? So if you get 75 by either meeting all your targets, or you don't meet some but you exceed others, there's chances for extra credit. They throw in points. It's a very Byzantine system, to be sure. But if you average out to 75 points, then you match your target. When we look at the district as a whole, you'll see the yellow bar is 75. We are not making our targets, which is why, and that's again on the whole, that's a giant aggregate. There are definitely schools with grades that are making, and groups of students who are making their goals. But on the whole, we're not. And this is obviously a cause for concern. And going back to my original point about putting this all in the proper context, until all of our students are, meeting success, we have work to do. We have to figure out ways to get better results, to help them to do better. This is telling us that not everybody is succeeding at a level that we would like them to. However, the red bars on this graph show you how the state is doing in meeting its goals. And as you can see, not only does the state not meet its goals, but it does not do as well as Attleboro does in approaching meeting those goals. So, as has been the case here for a long time now, you know, Attleboro has work to do, but it is exceeding, you know, its peers across the state in the progress it's making towards those goals. So, you know, still work to do, but when you put it into proper perspective, you can see that we're doing quite well.
Mr. Quinn?
What are the thresholds for each of those respective subgroups? Correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have a certain number of, let's say, ELL students in order to qualify for a subgroup. Is that correct? And do you know offhand what the thresholds would be? Is it about 30 students or per grade, or do you happen to know offhand?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I guess to my the second question, it is possible that there are some districts that do not have some of these subgroups. And how are we in terms of meeting our target? And maybe you're going to get to this when you kind of disaggregate the data, not just for all students,
Yep.
but for not these subgroups. Are we hitting that 75%
For our subgroups?
No, the 75% for those students not in the subgroups. For the remaining students, or are you just, when you look at that 75, is it just for the subgroups in terms of making progress?
Everyone needs to get 75.
Okay.
So,
So-
we put up here the 3 subgroups that represent the largest number of students in this district, which
Right.
are ELL, high needs, and special needs. There are other
What's the top
subgroups.
one?
Hmm?
What's the top line?
Students with disabilities.
Yes, special needs.
Right. I guess
Okay.
to reframe that all students includes all of our subgroups, correct?
Correct.
So there are students who take the assessments who would not fit into any of those subgroups, correct?
Correct.
And are we hitting that 75% with all those students not in those subgroups? Or are those, okay.
No, if we, I mean, it depends on how you slice it, I guess. Because the subgroups do contain all the kids one way or another.
Okay.
Um,
But I guess I think in some other districts, for example, there's an achievement gap for students who are not in any of those subgroups, correct? I guess I'm curious if the state even measures any of those students. Do they measure the progress of students not in those subgroups? And if for those students outside of those subgroups, are we hitting that 75 threshold in terms of growth or goals for students without disabilities, not an ELL or not a high need?
Well, again, depending on what school you're looking at,
Okay.
and what grade you're looking at, you might be hitting it. But
Right.
in terms of aggregate data for the district as a whole, we're not making it anywhere.
Okay.
That's accurate.
Thank you.
It's important to understand that to get the 75 points, to hit the target, there was they looked at where you were over a 6 year, and then set a 6-year target. And then they just, broke that up. So to get to 100%, actually you had to cut your gap in half, right?
Yes.
So if you were at 60, if your CPI was at, say, 60, so, you need 40 points to get to 100. So half of that would be 20 points. So you need to get 20 points over the 6-year period. And so they just, I should have picked a number that's easily divisible by 6, all right? So, it's 3 and change, right, per year. And you have to make that amount every year. And it's not just like it's 3 this year and then it's 3 off of that next year. It's 3 this year, but it's 6 off that original number this next year, and it's 9 off that number next year. So those goals those targets are arbitrarily chosen based on the way the system is set up, and you can be making steady progress and not necessarily ever be hitting your targets.
The arbitrary
Right,
targets, right.
right. Which is why most schools and most districts are level 2, which is they're not hitting those targets. But they are making progress, and that's, I think, the most important part of this is that things are improving. We are making progress. We're just not, the system isn't set up so that we game it to get the points to change the status. Again, put differently, this slide shows the high need and the narrowing gap of the high need. So in 2015, you have these results. So I think that's 93.5, 76.3. So that's how we did in ELA, math, and science for high need students last year. The red was the target for this year. So we needed to go from that number up to that number in each case, and green is actually how we did. So as you can see, in one case, ELA, we actually exceeded the target. So that's a place where we probably had 100 points.
Yep.
For the other two, we increased but did not hit the target, so we would have got 50 points under the system. So finally, growth data. So growth is measuring student progress by comparing one student's progress to that of other students with similar performance histories, their academic peers. So take a student, we say, okay, this student had a test score history of these scores. We look at everyone else who had that same history, and then we compare them to see how they did. And then it's percentile ranking. So under growth data, 50 is the score that is typical growth. And the way the statistics work under the growth system, 10 points in either direction are not, anything less than 10 points is statistically not significant. So a 40 is statistically the same as a 50, and a 50 is the same as a 60, which is why typical growth under the growth model is 40 to 60 is typical growth. And then anything in that band is basically statistically the same. Anything outside that band, below that is low growth, above that is high growth. So when we look at our performance as a district, the vast majority of the subjects that we're testing, and this is just the only ELA and math have growth because they're the only ones that test every year. You'll see that, again, this is district-wide. We only have 2 areas where we're outside the typical growth band. So that's 7th grade math and 10th grade math. So certainly that's an area of concern because that does represent low growth. It's at the high end, but it is low growth. But the more important thing with this slide is that when you slice the district by subject, by grade, we are pretty much typical growth. Our kids are growing at a rate that is typical for their peers.
Mr. Cadiz?
Thank you. But just to be clear, it's still growth. It's not regression. It's not.
Yeah.
It is still growth.
So what they do is they take 100 kids and they say, again, the 50th score is the median.
Right.
And then, the 40th score and the 60th score, and that's the typical is from 40 to 60. So, the median in each of these measures is within that typical.
Yeah.
Our kids are growing in a way that is, typical for what you would expect statewide.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, that's a snapshot of the district as a whole, right? We're showing typical growth. We are making progress towards our targets, although we are not achieving them. And we are, 6 of our schools are level 1, and 3 are level 2. So as a result, we are a level 2 district. For next steps, we need to dig deep into this data, right? We really need to decide what it means. What are our strengths and what are the areas that we need to shore up that are showing us some weakness. So as a district, we'll engage in this data analysis. Schools will be going in, diving in as groups, and then individual teachers will be looking at their data and trying to determine what kinds of things they want to do. We will be coming back with an in-depth follow-up presentation to the school committee after that data analysis is complete to share our findings with you and to go into this into greater depth. And then finally, all of this work will find its way into our school and district improvement planning. through the course of the year.
So Geddes?
Thank you. Just, do you have any idea, maybe anecdotally, obviously you just got this on Friday, so you haven't had a chance to really dive into it, but the areas where we do need the most improvement, do you have any guesses as to where that would be, or without analyzing it, are you not comfortable?
No, I mean, honestly, I think the data demonstrates that the issues that we've had historically continue to challenge us. The transition to 5th grade is an area that continues to be an area of concern. Certainly our science scores are not where we want them. And while the number of students getting advanced in math continues to go up a little bit, we're not really figuring out how to help the students at the other end of the scale in high school math, and we need to try something different to reach that that subgroup. So those are some things that sort of jump out. Each school has its own areas that they're going to focus on, but overall, these are strong results. Again, when you compare us to how we're doing and who we serve and what we have to work with, I think once again Attleboro can be pretty proud of its school system.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Quinn?
I just want to say, first of all, thank you for the presentation. Secondly, I really appreciate the perspective that this district administration brings to the data. I tend to look at these assessment scores kind of like a blood pressure test. It gives you some indication of your health, but it won't tell you, how your spirit's feeling, or if you have a broken arm necessarily, or anything along those lines. But it will give you some indication. I think for moving forward, the question becomes not only how do we look at the data, but also how do we improve upon those skills within the context of our strategic plan, and how do we build those skills in engaging, challenging, inspiring ways. And I think a lot of the work that's been going on with the lab and the MICA work MICA work that you're doing will help to continue the shift away from test prep to more authentic ways of building the skills that they need both in life and on these assessments. So I wish you the best of luck.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. We are well past the point of diminishing returns when it comes to a drill and kill approach to getting achievement results. The kind of results we're now dealing with, where so many students are at proficiency, to get over the hump, to take it to the next level, requires another rethinking of how we should be going about this in the first place. The low-lying fruit has been gathered long ago, and we're really at a point now where we have to dig deep and rethink some of our assumptions about how best to educate kids.
I think that segues in a little bit into the question that I had, and it maybe partially answers it, or at least starts us down that track. And that's, a lot of us spent the last week, talking about really a new way of learning, differentiated learning, problem-solving based learning, and the like. A lot of which is in our strategic plan, so that we've been talking about for the past year or two. Anyway, and it really seems to be fleshing out the benefits of it. But how do we make that kind of jive with what is a very data-driven test score, it seems to be test prep mandate coming from the state on this, where the test scores remain important.
Yeah, I think one of the strengths of the state's approach is that we don't have a state curriculum; we have state frameworks. We have local control over our curriculum. We can write the curriculum that we want. And reach the standards in the way that we see fit and think is best for our students. And so a project-based, differentiated approach is something we can try, right? I mean, we are well within our rights to take that approach and to get there in that way. And I think there's a growing conviction that we will get better results if we stop focusing on test scores as the end of what we're doing, and put them in the proper view of that they're a measure they're helpful, but they're not the reason we're here, right? We're trying to educate kids, and the best way to do that is to engage, challenge, and inspire them. And that if we give them challenging work, if we engage them with relevant work, if we work with them and treat them like the future adults they're going to be, they'll be inspired to rise to the occasion. And even though to do that you have to spend less time covering material, they'll actually learn what we teach them better, and we'll get a better return on that investment, and then we'll get better results, even though we're technically teaching less.
Good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, good. No, you convinced me. Any other questions? Thank you again for that presentation, and it is, I think, evidence of the good work the administration, the teachers are doing, and the students and families as well. I mean, it's
quite frankly, it's the teachers who deserve the credit. They're the ones in the room, getting it done every day. They do amazing work.
Next up, it's been alluded to a few times already, the MSBA update. Superintendent Sawyer.
Yeah, I'd like to invite Mr. Rooney and Ally back. So, Mr. Withers and Ms. Gales, you joined us last week, so feel free to jump in as part of this presentation. The four of us all spent 3 days last week envisioning the high school, the AHS of the future. This was part of the feasibility study under the MSBA process, by which we are looking at a renovated high school. Every proposal by all of the designers, and we did select Castle Booze, they all had to identify an educational consultant. It was part of their presentation to the school building committee when we had to select the designer. And in this case, Dr. Frank Locker was the consultant for that proposal. And so he came in and led us over 3 days. I would say 2 of those days were really spent thinking about what should teaching and learning look like at the high school level, especially in the context of what kind of world are the kids that we're educating going to enter into, certainly in the near future, but in the long term as well. Obviously, a project of this scope, was one that would be you'd be planning for multiple decades out. And, the world changes faster at a faster pace all the time. So the question is, what does education look like in that world, and what kinds of experiences do we need to be delivering? So we spent a couple days, I'm talking about that, and then we got into the building at the building itself and what might look like in that. This was a major commitment, these 3 days. It's hard for anyone to lose 3 days in a week. I expressed my gratitude last week, and I'll do so again today, because I know that it was a big commitment by, again, we had a group of students. I doubt missing 3 days of class makes their educational experience any easier, although, as I hope Ally will talk about in a second, perhaps the experience itself was a more valuable one in the long run. We had educators who, again, missing class ain't easy. They got to plan the lessons for the subs. They got to make up the work. The administrators who weren't there to make sure that everything was going well, central office, and then we had community representatives and community members. So all these people gave up a significant amount of time to make this activity work, and I really appreciate that they were willing to do that. As for the experience itself, I think I'll stop talking and let maybe Ally talk a little bit about what it is we did and how that all worked. And we did, but although before I do that, I should say our students really, really did us proud last week. They demonstrated over and over again just how fine a job I think the Attleboro Public Schools does in preparing our youth for future adulthood. It was really something else to see our high school students participate in that as equal members, and whose voices were respected, and who they represented themselves so well. They were articulate and thoughtful, and really helped to make the whole experience, I think, positive for everybody. So, Ally, thank you, and to all your colleagues, your peers, they did a great job.
Thank you. Like I said before, it was definitely such an awesome experience to be a part of. One thing that we focused on that Mr. Sawyer had just touched upon was the moving on to a more interdisciplinary learning, and I think that that's very important, especially in today's society. I mean, you go out and you see so many different things happening in one place that you need knowledge in all different subjects and see how they connect, and I think that that's extremely, extremely important. And another thing too that we talked about was, like we said, we need to engage more students into what we're learning, because some students just can't sit and listen for hours to a teacher talking. So again, we talked about maybe looking for and explaining to your students the why rather than the how. So why are we doing this? How is this, representative in your life today? When are you going to be using this? And I think that's very important, and we did talk about a lot of different ways to engage the students and different activities we could do, different projects we could run. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll definitely be interesting once it comes out, and I think it'll be really successful.
I want to echo what Mr. Sawyer said, that I was extremely proud of our students. We had student leaders from various constituencies. We had our two SAC representatives that are with you on a regular basis. But we had other students that were instrumental in the showcase that we had back in June, that was on the heels of a budget crisis and on the heels of even the potential of a student walkout. We had students that were instrumental in kind of turning the tide of that situation back to a positive. We had we had students who are leaders within student government, and as Mr. Sawyer said, not only to be seen as equal participants within the process, but to actually lead discussions and make presentations was very validating for the high school in what we try to teach from the standpoint of the articulation, the confidence, and the presence that our students that we want our students to have when they graduate from the high school. We are very grateful to Sensata, who was a fabulous host to us. As I mentioned before, they provided the space for free. They provided 2 meals a day and a lot of other perks for our comfort level. And again, we had representatives from the business community and other community members from Attleboro. We had representatives of municipal government, the school building commission. As Mr. Sawyer mentioned, Mrs. Scales and Mr. Withers joined us. Several members from the high school staff and administration were there, as well as our students. I personally am very grateful to Ms. Hickox and our deans for doing a great job of keeping the ship going in the right direction in my absence. But I think one of the things that Allie touched upon about interdisciplinary learning, one of the things that really seemed to be a prevailing theme with a lot of the groups was that we have such a high level of respect for our CTE programs that we see the next version of Attleboro High School having those CTE programs integrated with math classes, social studies classes, a much more diverse approach to having students be able to assimilate those skills along with skills that they're learning, in their core academic classes. And we personally feel that that our CTE program has always been a jewel in the crown of what is Attleboro High School. But we see the next iteration of Attleboro High School taking even more advantage of our CTE programs.
another piece that I did want to mention is that through the conversations that were had during the first 2 days and talking specifically about the type of learning, the type of relevant and authentic learning experiences that we want our students to have are directly aligned and connected to our district learning priorities as well as our student exit outcomes. And those are critical pieces that we have decided as a district were important to us, and they came out loud and clear through the conversations that we had with the community, with administration, with staff, with students during those 3 days. So.
I just want, I appreciate being able to participate. I really enjoyed the way that the tables were set up, and I think everybody, I know at least at our table, had a voice and their opinion counted. It was nice to have, a parent perspective versus a teacher perspective and the student perspective. I don't know, I'm not embarrassed to say, but by day 2, I was emotionally exhausted. It was good to have that Thursday off and come back refreshed, but because there was a real lot going on. I think the one theme I took away from it for us going forward is flexibility. That seemed to be a major theme, whether the flexibility in the teaching and learning, the way we approach it, flexibility in the use of the building. So I'm really excited to see what the outcome is and what the report looks like afterwards. It was a wonderful experience, a great group of people.
Yeah, I agree. It was a very worthwhile experience. It was full days. Not only was it 3 days, but it was the days were full. From when you got there to when you left, there was very few breaks, including working pretty much through lunch. But it was a lot of good work came of it, and I was encouraged to see kind of a lot of consensus, maybe not on specific ideas, but on the general themes and themes that kind of go along with what our strategic plan says and what as a district we've been pushing towards. So the fact that the people that we had in the room, including the experts and Dr. Locker, seem to all be pointing in the same direction. And just to kind of, I think, pile on something Mr. Sawyer and Mr. Rooney said about the students, I think, as I said, it's important to note how impressive they were, but just so people have an idea of what they were doing, this is pretty in-depth group conversations of 4 to 5 people, of pretty complex ideas, and then presenting to a room full of about 50 people, administrators, the mayor, city leaders, business leaders. I mean, a great experience, and they did a phenomenal job. So I think it was good for them, but also I think it was good for us as a community to see, what we're doing this for. So kudos again to you, Allie, and your peers.
Thank you.
So for next steps, there will be a report that's produced as a result of this work. We expect that in about a month. We'll certainly submit that to you as soon as it becomes available. In the meantime, Mr. Rooney and I have to go back and now revise the educational program based on that work. And to be honest, I'm glad that it's sort of in the form that it is now, because it'll be pretty easy, I think, to take what we have and modify it with the information that we've gathered as a result of those 3 days. So we're looking for an approval of that final version in November. So the plan is to get you a draft for consideration in late October.
Yeah, so I think we should probably have a meeting where we can discuss it, and I think it'd be helpful that the committee have it at least a week in advance of that meeting, because it'll be a lengthy document that give everyone a chance to read it. We can discuss it at our meeting if there are any tweaks that need to be made, and then the next meeting we can hopefully approve it.
Yep.
Sound good? Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Last item on our business agenda is Mr. Sawyer, the legal opinion regarding a conflict of interest with regard to negotiations and dealings with the AEA.
Yes, thank you. So as I believe the committee is well aware, I am married to an AEA member.
That's what.
Surprise. So we did seek legal counsel's advice on the correct way to proceed, and I provided that for you. It did include filling out 2 forms, which are basically a form of disclosure of the potential conflict. One need only be submitted and filed. The other does need, requires action on the part of the committee to decide whether or not you think that my potential conflict is an issue or not for the community.
So your disclosure under section 23 was made in this correspondence. And then under Mass General Laws, Chapter 268A, Section 19, that you made again a disclosure to us, and then it requires a determination by the school committee that the potential conflict of interest is not so substantial as to be deemed likely to affect the integrity of the services, which Mr. Sawyer, which we may expect from Mr. Sawyer. So at this point, I would be looking for a motion for that determination.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're free to do your job.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sawyer. Moving on to our subcommittee report for this week, we have policy and personnel. Subcommittee chairperson, Mrs. Scales.
All right,
You're on
thank
the
you.
clock.
Thank you. The first order of business is to remove from the table policy EFD, pricing of and payment of food services, and policy KFBR2, use of Attleboro High School concession stand. Any comments on that? All right. These two policies will go into immediate effect. Included in your packets were additions to the policy and personnel subcommittee dates. It was felt that monthly meetings were better suited to the tasks at hand. At the meeting, we discussed policy BGC, policy review. I spoke to our Mass district rep, who informed me that a fee of $10,500 that Mass would perform the service of reviewing our policy book in entirety. While the subcommittee administration agreed there are some positives to going this route, we are not in the financial position to do so. So, as promised, the central office team brought forth Section C of the policy book, General School Administration, as a starting point for us reviewing the book. They were instructed to take a thorough examination of the policies in that section and bring back any changes they feel need to be made at the next meeting. Next, we discussed residency policy JF and proof of residency requirements JFE1. The minor edits that you saw are suggested were confirmed by legal counsel to be approved by DESE, and we can finally be done with this. With that, I make a motion to approve policy JF residency with legal edits as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I make a motion to approve policy exhibit JFE1, proof of residency with legal edits as presented.
So moved. Second.
Any comments? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. These two policies will be tabled for 2 weeks to allow for public comment. Next, the central office team brought forth a proposed exhibit KFBE1, use of Attleboro High School concession stand user agreement. The subcommittee gave feedback and suggested edits, and the policy exhibit will be brought back for review again at the next meeting. Next, Mr. Geddes brought us up to date on a survey that will look into the reasons why residents do not send their children to the Attleboro Public Schools. The hope is to get a better understanding and perhaps identify ways of keeping students in the district. Any comments?
Based on the subcommittee's feedback, I did make some edits and sent those to Jonathan Plurd this morning in OIT. So I'm hoping to have a link to send to the subcommittee to give a better idea of the actual setup of the survey. Then hopefully we'll be able to bring it to the full committee sometime in October.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lastly, the subcommittee inquired about a DESE deadline for updating the substance use prevention and substance abuse education policy. This will be looked into and hopefully brought to the next meeting, which will be on October 17th. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Scales. Next, we have open forum. This is the time when members of the public may address the school committee. Open forum is not a time for committee members to engage in dialogue with members of the public. Guidelines for open forum are available to you. Please know that we are interested in what you have to say, but we cannot respond without background information on your issue. If you would like to address the committee at open forum, please come forward and state your name and address. There being no one, that'll close open forum. That concludes our agenda for tonight. Is a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Like adding
Time is it?
infrastructure as well as actual buildings